thanks for the use of the Sajak Arias law firm. I'm very grateful for that. Over the last few years, I've been going around to say that the biggest deficit in America is not the national debt, it's the trust deficit. People just don't trust, and understandably and rightly anymore. Leadership of both parties have let them down. Our government has let them down. Wall Street has let them down. Who's been held accountable for the meltdown on Wall Street? Nobody. Who's been held accountable for post-Katrina, where our government did not perform well? Or who's been held accountable for our government taking us into Iraq and never finding the weapons of mass destruction that were supposed to be there? So I think it's very understandable that many people do not trust our government today as they say this Iranian accord will actually enhance our security and that of Israel. I would like to talk to you as a cautious supporter of this Iranian accord. I believe that it can enhance our security and that of Israel's. And I'd like to earn your trust as I walk you through it today. From my experience with 31 years in the Navy, during that period of time having operated in the Persian Gulf quite a few times, having served for President Clinton as Director of Defense Policy, having served in the Joint Staff where I did political military assessments for the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, where I served in the Navy Staff and did strategic planning, where I headed the Navy's anti-terrorist units, and where I then served in Congress on the House Armed Services Committee. And from that experience, I'd like to walk you through this accord and earn your trust that this would actually have a high probability of enhancing our security. I bring that up because I want to walk you through this process. Because at the end of the day, the only thing that matters in anything about this is when you do the cost-benefit ratio. Do the benefits outweigh the cost for our national security and that of our most valued ally, Israel, in that region? And if it does, then we should support this accord. As I walk you through this, I'd like to take you back in the process. The context in which this accord should be seen in the history of similar agreements with other nations, and what it bodes for us for the future. So at the beginning of this process, I'd like to take you to the back at the beginning of this administration. The previous administration was planning, with funding in the budget, to put a missile defense system in Eastern Europe, in Czech Republic and in Poland. That missile defense system, which was to be online by 2018, would guard America from Iran's efforts to have a ballistic missile that could actually go intercontinental all the way and hit our homeland. That defense system that was just beginning to be budgeted for would also protect Europe. And all of, even down close to Israel, but not quite close enough. It would come down and not do this portion, but everything else through Europe, all the way back to the United States. It would not be able to protect Israel from ballistic missiles from Iran. In an effort to move the process forward, to stop Iran from having a nuclear weapon capability, this administration removed the funding and stopped and canceled the funding to put those ground-based interceptor missile system there in the Czech Republic and Poland. Because Russia felt that this system was actually meant against it, although it had no capability against numerous missiles coming from Russia, and it had become an affront to them. By taking the stick out of the eye of the Russian bear, and actually canceling that program, the quid pro quo under the table was that Russia would then pivot towards Iran and stop providing it support in its nuclear capabilities, where it had provided scientists and material for it to begin to pursue and build upon nuclear reactors that could produce nuclear-grade material for a bomb. Unspoken, but that was the under-the-table quid pro quo. And it worked. Russia, along with China, formed under this administration an international group that you needed not just the United States, but all these other nations that traded with Iran and had borders with Iran to clamp down on Iran with crippling sanctions, economic sanctions that would actually bring it to the table by making it hurt economically. That's how this accord came out, because Iran did come to the table. But in addition to this, what the administration did is it took that capability that it would have had on land and instead, at much less cost, put that system on Aegis cruisers. Ships that I floated around this world on. Has the world's greatest radar system, but not the capability yet to intercept, to see and intercept intercontinental ballistic missiles. By the end of this decade, at the exact timeline that ground-based system would have protected the United States from Iranian ballistic missiles, intercontinental ones, our Aegis cruisers will be sitting there in the Mediterranean, protecting us with the equal capability if Iran were ever to get a ballistic missile that could reach intercontinentally, as well as all of Europe, including that small portion of Turkey, and in addition to that, all of Israel. We were able to double down on the security of Israel by providing its first defense by us, which wouldn't have happened with that ground-based system that the previous administration was pursuing. For the first time, it would have us providing them ballistic missile defense against those intercontinental missiles, as well as ourselves. And second, it brought us to today, where we were successful in having that international coalition that came together in order to bring Iran to the table. That is the great mix that I learned when I was Director of Defense Policy, where how the military and our diplomacy can work together. Military options should always be on the table, but it should be on the back of the table. The reason I support this, if for no other reason, this agreement, is that 30 days from today, Iran can have bomb-grade material for a nuclear bomb. 30 days from today, with uranium fuel that it has enriched to a certain level, and in 30 days more could get it to that level for bomb-grade material for a nuclear bomb. This agreement sets Iran back on its heels at least 1 year by diluting all that uranium to such a level that it would take a year of centrifuges to spin it back up to bomb-grade material to be used in a nuclear bomb. And those centrifuges that are needed to enrich it, the advanced centrifuges that they've acquired over the years until we had Russia and others clamp down on Iran, they are going to be placed in storage. And anyone who knows anything about centrifuges, when you place them in storage, they degrade. They're very sensitive if they're not remaining hooked up and in use of some sort. So that 1 year may be even more. Should we trust them? No. Not at all. When I operated in the Persian Gulf, you would have the Iranian Revolutionary Guard come spinning towards my aircraft carrier, and just a short distance away before our aircraft would take them down, spin away. Do I trust them? Absolutely not. And we should keep in mind what Ronald Reagan said when he didn't trust the Soviet Union and did his START talks, or President Nixon when he did his SALT talks, strategic arms limitation talks, reduction talks on nuclear arms. Trust but verify, President Reagan said. My words are, verify before you even trust. So what does this treaty do? Today we don't have anyone there going in to inspect. Fordo, that's 300 feet under hard rock we can't even get in to look at. Instead of 50 inspectors that the International Atomic Energy Agency has that are focusing on Iran, we will triple that number to 150, with access to go in and look at those facilities. Second, we will use the most advanced technology, satellites, infrared, soil samples, lab tests, monitors to go in and check. And the Navy always learned, expect what you inspect. And in this case, there are many who have worked in North Korea on that regime and its pursuit of nuclear weapons and elsewhere that said this is an extraordinarily even stronger type of inspection regime than we've had before. We have the right to go in and inspect at any moment those facilities that we suspect today or know today have anything to do with the pursuit of nuclear weapons. And if something comes down the line, for example, we suspect that the president of Iran is using his basement to develop a nuclear weapon, we have the right to go and say, we want to go in there to your home and inspect. It'll take about 3 weeks to get the approval process because Iran wants to say, show me the proof or some semblance of it before you come into my home. But that approval process is dominated by the Western powers completely, and we will be able to go in. Will they cheat? They may. Just like the Soviet Union did when they signed up to the START and the SALT talks. And because of our inspection regimes, and under our pressure, we put them back into the box. Do I trust them? No. But that's what that verification regime is about before we even begin to trust. We won the Cold War without having to go to war with the Soviet Union. We did it with a military that was strong and there every day. I operated in it. We can win this Cold War with Iran if we do it wisely and wise, but always having the military option available if they do cheat and then continue to pursue a nuclear weapon. But I want you to understand what a military strike will be like if we strike Iran. I have participated in the war plan development as well as the war games having to do with Iran, because that was one of our two major regional contingencies that General Powell in the early 90s said we must be able to go east and west nearly simultaneously to two major regional conflicts, and our military needs to be able to do two nearly simultaneously. Iran was one of those that we participated in to prepare for. Iran has, in the Persian Gulf, a score of very small midget submarines that we cannot find. The United States Navy sonar does not work in very shallow water. The reverberations are too much. We just can't find them. Nor their kilo submarines that they've imported from Russia that will quietly sit on the bottom, perhaps in the Straits of Hormuz as we come through, where I've been through, and you can't maneuver as you go through. And even if you could detect them, is it a submarine or is it one of the thousands of metallic objects on those shallow floors of the ocean, of the sea there, dropped by the oil tankers as 35 go through that strait every day and dump their stuff overboard? So we will withdraw our carrier battle group, and we will move them bound into the northern Arabian Sea, the Gulf of Oman. We will probably need to do this strike, the ready assistance of the Arab nations letting us use, which we don't have a surety for, the ability to use our land bases in some of the Arab countries. But aircraft carrier battle groups are the key. The strike will be wide in breadth, deep in scope. I participated in studies in the last few years with other retired generals and admirals to go through what this strike might portend for us in cost. It will take months for us to execute this successfully. Weeks at a minimum, but almost assuredly our conclusion was months. Because remember, the Iranians just don't have submarines. They have thousands of mines that they drop from fishing vessels. And that strait will close down for months, if not a year, as 1/5 of the world's oil supply no longer can get through the Straits of Hormuz. Oil prices will skyrocket, the market will plummet, like it did during that oil embargo during the Ford administration, for those that might remember. And then, all along here, are hundreds of rockets and missiles aimed against our ships. Just a mile or two, sometimes as you go through the straits, away, that you can almost see them. You can surely see the land, and what we call the seersucker missiles. Many of these missiles can also reach out to our troops sitting in Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates, all the way to Israel. As we begin our strikes, we will have to go through the surface-to-air missile systems, a number of which are sophisticated. We will have to strike them down and take those missile systems down, so then we can open up a path, so we can egress into the ability to strike at the nuclear facilities. But even before then, we will have to kill as many of these surface-to-surface missiles before they can do harm and damage, because we will have struck and gone to war, and Iran will be using them. And before too many can do its damage, that will be our focus. Can we do it? Yes. Your United States military, peerless in this world, that I loved every day of and would serve there today if I might, will do the job. But at most, it can stop the Iranian pursuit of a nuclear weapons capability. At most, our military can stop the pursuit of a nuclear weapon capability of Iran for 4 years. Militaries can stop a problem. We just can't permanently fix a problem. That military option, however, is there, ready to be used. But the aftermath of that strike will make the aftermath of Iraq look like a cakewalk, as there's an exponential increase in the global war of terror. Some say that crippling sanctions, even more than we've used today, should be used to make sure that we get even more from Iran. Remove all of its infrastructure that has anything whatsoever to do with not only nuclear weapons, but perhaps even some of the weaponization of other types of arms. Those crippling sanctions they talk about, we have used against North Korea. Harshest sanctions ever applied by this world. And after we've been doing it, it hasn't worked. They have exploded 3 nuclear devices during that period of time. The Russians and the Chinese, almost assuredly, will not remain in this international coalition applying sanctions if we come back and say, I know we had a deal, but we want more. Russia and China will assuredly walk away, and almost as assuredly the European Union. And then what flows into Iran is whatever it wants and needs in order to pursue its nuclear capability. And as of great concern as a military strike, and the cost of it, which we can do, will be Saudi Arabia's almost assured acquisition of a nuclear weapon capability. If you've been watching the news, you know that over the years, Saudi Arabia has provided millions of dollars, billions of dollars. Saudi Arabia has provided billions of dollars to Pakistan, which has nuclear weapons, and 1,000 scientists trained at the most radical of Islamic universities that built those weapons. Today, Pakistan, as you've been reading, is in Yemen, helping Saudi Arabia that's concerned about the rebel forces that are now threatening instability on its peninsula. They're not there out of the charity of their heart. This is payback for the assistance of billions of dollars from the Saudis, who have used it as an insurance policy, as an unspoken quid pro quo, that if Iran gets a nuclear weapon, we want you to build one for us too. And now you have a regional arms race. Imagine an existential threat that we had with the Soviet Union on nuclear weapon, where we wanted to bring that off the table as much as possible, and compare it to the existential threat Israel has today with Iran, if it were to get this nuclear capability. But imagine it double down with Saudi Arabia and Iran. Saudi Arabia knows that Iran is after it's against us and Israel. Those are the alternatives to crippling sanctions that most assuredly or probably would occur. Not everything in this treaty is perfect. Not anything in any treaty is perfect, as you do a principled compromise to bring about better benefits for our national security than cost with any agreement. Yes, we will release billions of dollars of frozen assets to Iran. And it will probably continue to do, or surely continue to do mischief through its proxies in the global war of terror. And will continue to develop that undersea warfare capability of diesel submarines and other types of harm that are asymmetrically opposed to the flow in and out of the Gulf if it wants to close it down, of mines and others. And they hold hostages that they shouldn't at all and should be released. That is not unlike the Soviet Union, that actually used proxies to go to war against us, from North Korea to Vietnam, northern Vietnam, where it steered up conflict against our interest in South America, or had opposition to us, like in Cuba. And it used its funding to harass us in other areas. It kept our spies in jail. And it also kept human rights violators and those who fought for democracy in them also. But our leaders, from President Nixon through Reagan, continuing on, understood the existential threat to America was nuclear weapons that they had. And if we could bring about a more secure, safe America, and then keep focusing on these other issues, we would ultimately, safely, securely win the Cold War. That is what this Iranian Accord is about. Is it perfect? No. There's only one perfect thing in the world, and that's my wife. As this discussion goes on, and you rightfully look at it and ponder every day your jobs, your livelihoods, your education of the children, etc. We have too few who understand any longer in Washington, D.C., in serious positions of responsibility, particularly our Congress, that understand that militaries can stop a problem. We just can't fix it. If anyone thinks we fixed Iraq, let me know. Diplomacy is hard, it's difficult, it's complex. As you can see what we did with Russia, in order to have it accept it would turn towards Iran and close it off and stranglehold it through sanctions with us. As we removed the missile system that was land-based, but in our wisdom to give nothing away in our security, enhanced it, and Israel's, by placing it on ships at sea that are mobile to move anywhere without the world and cost a lot less. Militaries can stop a problem. War, as I described, is also very complex and hard. I can remember going through these straits of Hormuz. A young captain of my first ship, a fighting missile frigate, 150 men aboard. And I was the first that the Iranians flew a warplane over, as I could not even maneuver my ship. I was in such shallow water. And it was my decision whether to shoot or not. There's no Mother May I out there. I made the decision as I watched the emissions, as I checked, as I saw whether it was a warlike maneuver it was doing, or was it just testing? Not to. Do I trust them? Yeah. But do I trust that we could have leaders that would look at the benefits and the cost and see that the benefits outweigh the cost to improve our security and that of our most valued ally, Israel? Yes. In this case, yes.